All right. I'm Lawrence D.K. Lawrence is spelled with a U. Last name is spelled K-A-Y. I was in this division, Division 4, First District, for 1 year as an associate judge and 4 years as PJ. And I retired in September of 2005.
Got it. Justice Reardon, your turn.
Yes, I'm Timothy A. Reardon, R-E-A-R-D-O-N, Associate Justice of the California Court of Appeal, Division 4. And
Okay, I go, and I'm rolling. We are rolling, and Justice Reardon, we're ready to go.
all right, today's date is October 12th, 2007. This interview is being conducted as part of the Appellate Court Legacy Project, the purpose of which is to create an oral history of the appellate courts in California through a series of interviews of retired justices who have served on our court. I'm Tim Reardon, an Associate Justice of the First District Court of Appeal, Division 4, and we are honored to have with us today the Honorable Lawrence D. Kay, who served on the First District from 2000 to 2005. Welcome, Larry, and thank you for participating in this project.
Thank you, Tim.
It's a particular pleasure for me because we have been colleagues both on the San Francisco Superior Court and the California Court of Appeal for a number of years, and we're also very good friends. So
Try to keep that in mind as we go by. Huh?
so there will be no tough questions here.
Oh, good.
You, like myself, are native San Franciscan. Can you tell us a little bit about the Kay family and growing up in San Francisco?
Sure. My dad came out here in the middle of the Depression, 1934, 35, and met my mom and went into the retail clothing business on Mission Street, and from there got involved into real estate investing and some other things. And I was born in 1937, went to Winfield Scott Junior High School, Winfield Scott Grammar School, Marina Junior High, Lowell, then on to Berkeley. And after Berkeley, I went into the construction business for a couple of years and decided to come back and go to law school, and went to Bolt, where I graduated in 1963.
Okay. You mentioned Lowell here in San Francisco, fine
Yes.
high school, and as I recall, there are a number of judges who are graduates of Lowell High School.
Stu Pollock is one.
Stu Pollock is one, I know, and
Chuck Breyer, Stephen Breyer of the United States Supreme Court.
the Breyer brothers.
Yeah.
So it's obviously it speaks well for Lowell High School, and for yourself, having graduated from Lowell. You've moved ahead here after graduating from Lowell. You went to UC Berkeley.
Right.
And then from there to Bolt Hall School of Law. What is your major in at Berkeley undergraduate?
Economics.
Okay. And what caused you to pursue a career in the law?
Well, to be honest with you, I was working for a construction company in Southern California as kind of an assistant expediter on job sites for Sears Roebuck. And the construction company ran into financial difficulty, and that didn't look like it was going to be a future for me. I got a call from a friend of mine from undergraduate who suggested maybe we ought to become lawyers. And it sounded like a good idea, so we both applied and were accepted to Bolt, and I'm very glad I made that decision. I suppose I should be grateful to the construction company for running into difficulty.
Well, on a somber note, I know you're very close to your dad, and he recently passed away, but obviously he had a great influence on you as well.
He did indeed.
You mentioned attending Bolt. What do you think? Apparently, there's some move to change the name of Bolt Hall. I don't know if you were aware of that or not.
I was not aware of
Okay,
it.
well, I was going to get your reaction to that, but it's probably better that
From
you...
Bolt to what?
That's the question, I guess.
Oh, I see.
Now, you moved on describing or discussing attending Bolt Hall, but you didn't mention, and it certainly must have been an honor, that you served as the associate editor of the California Law Review at Bolt Hall in 1963. Was that a good experience for you?
It was. I even remember some of the articles that and notes that I wrote.
That's excellent.
Actually, these days, the further away an event is, the better I seem to remember it.
All right. Then, of course, you got your JD degree or law degree and passed the bar and then entered private practice.
Yes.
What was the name of the, did you enter, did you do a firm or?
Yes, I did. I went to work for a firm that is still in existence. It was called Severson, Worson, Burke, and Larson.
Sure.
And I worked for Kurt Melchior and Bob Zhang in that office. And after a couple of years, Bob Zhang wanted to split off and form his own small office and asked me to go with him, so I did.
Yeah, those names, of course, are very familiar to me as
Bob
well.
was a great tax lawyer.
Yeah. And did they have kind of an influence on you with respect to?
Yeah, I had tremendous respect for both of them, and especially for Bob, with whom for whom I left the firm. And he was a brilliant guy who had worked 18 hours a day, and was kind of a lawyer's lawyer. And he would get a lot of referrals on really complicated transactions and so forth. It was a great experience. I felt that I learned under a master.
And the nature of the practice itself was commercial?
It was commercial, mostly transactional litigation, shopping center developers, people, startup companies, and some very large companies, and very complicated estate planning and tax-related issues.
Okay. Now, my notes reflect that you were in private practice for approximately 17 years. Was it all with the same firm?
No. After a few years, Bob Zhang had a social relationship with Isabella Grant, who I had known for many years, actually ever since law school.
Sure.
And I went then with Isabella, and we had a firm known as Livingston, Grant, Stone, and Kay.
And that was a family law type of practice?
Well, it was for them, not for me.
I see.
I was never in the family law side. I still did the transactional land developer and some landlord-tenant and so on. Mostly involved in getting use permits and appearing before various administrative bodies, doing leases.
All right, and then I guess the tough question: what influenced you to seek an appointment to the bench? After
Well, I'll try to
17
keep this
years?
short. I was not hit by a bolt of lightning, nor can I honestly say that I had always wanted to be a judge.
Well, that's good.
Which is what Charlie Clifford told me to tell Jerry Brown when I went to Sacramento to be interviewed. The fact of the matter is that one day I got a call from one of my commercial clients, a fellow that owned some shopping centers, and he told me that his son had gotten into trouble in Oregon, and he wanted me to go up and see if I could do something about it. The trouble involved rolling a pickup truck on the highway that was full of marijuana. So I tried to convince him unsuccessfully that I was the last guy in the world. I'd be happy to try to find him somebody in Oregon, but it shouldn't be me. Anyway, for one reason or another, I was able to get a pretty good result. And he was a Berkeley student, and pretty soon my phone started to ring, and I was getting all these drug defense cases. And I found it interesting for a while, but I was doing a lot of traveling, and I began to doubt, the wisdom of that direction. I had a big federal case in South Carolina involving South Americans and so on, and I began to get a little uncomfortable, to tell you the truth. And as I looked back, I saw that my friend Jerry Brown was ending the end of his second term, and we'd become friendly in his campaign, and
Sure.
might be willing to put my name forward for Muni Court, as he had recently done for Isabella Grant.
Correct.
And he was amenable, and he was kind enough to appoint me to the Muni Court.
And Larry, that was in 1981.
That's right.
That you were appointed, and you served in the San Francisco Municipal Court until your elevation to the San Francisco Superior Court.
Right, about a year later.
But yeah, okay, 1982, 83. Now, you had a long and distinguished career on the Superior Court. In the 17 years you served on the Superior Court, you handled a variety of assignments. Could you tell me about some of the different assignments that you had, and whether you had some favorites in connection with those assignments?
Well, you and I were right down the hall from each other at the Hall of Justice, and we had a wonderful collegiality. I think we moved the calendar along and tried to be fair with everybody and accurate. And
I think I followed you into the Master Calendar Department.
that's right. I was Master Calendar Judge, which we used to refer incorrectly to ourselves as the presiding judge of the criminal division.
But it sounds good.
Sounded very good, yeah.
But to your credit, I think you served for 2 years, and my stint was
Right.
just one. But,
Well, I liked the administrative aspect of it, and trying to work down the cases to a manageable number. I firmly believe, and I think you do too, that things can get out of hand and you can get too many cases backlogged, and then the outcomes are affected by,
precisely.
by the backlog. And we try to not get into that situation. And you and I were both, I think, pretty successful at keeping it manageable.
True. And now I know, kind of toward the end of your career in Superior Court, you were in probate.
Right. Well, that was something that I frankly appointed myself to after I was presiding judge.
That's right. I skipped over that important fact, but you did serve. I believe it was in my notes in terms of your services,
96,
being elected, 96, elected by your colleagues to serve as presiding judge of the entire court. But after your service as presiding judge, which I assume you enjoyed.
I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
That was during coordination. That was before consolidation.
Yes. Okay.
And so while I worked with the presiding judge of the Muni Court, I didn't have the same responsibility as those who do it now have for as many judges. It was
Yes.
probably easier than it is now.
Yeah. But you did go through that period of time, the coordination aspect of Superior
Right.
Court's municipal
Right, and
court.
there were a few political difficulties, as you know, that,
Right.
on the way toward consolidation.
Yes.
But everything worked out.
Let me ask you.
But before that, I had done complex civil and class actions, and actually met Judge Kramer and now presently Judge Appel when they appeared before me opposite each other in a big civil case, a big antitrust case.
That must have been an interesting case. With
It
those
was an interesting
attorneys
case,
involved, and in the time that you did serve on Superior Court, both as presiding judge, criminal, and presiding judge of the entire court, and the numerous assignments that you had, I know, and as I mentioned earlier, you did do probate. I think that was
Yes.
your last probably assignment.
That was the last thing that I did before I was elevated to the Court
Right.
of Appeal for 3 years.
And
That
did
was exceptionally rewarding.
let me just jump ahead a little bit, although we probably should cover this at another point. It's good to see you back here, but you've been back quite often since your retirement, and that's
true.
because you serve on certain task forces that, by appointment of the Chief Justice.
Yes, the chief, actually, I think on the occasion of my retirement, when he came down here and was nice enough to send me off, Marvin Baxter and some of the other friends that I made while I was on the Judicial Council, immediately appointed me as chair of the statewide DV task force reporting to the Judicial Council. We're about to wind up our report after all this time. And
So
I have had many meetings and a lot of contact with both people on the Judicial Council and the AOC and so on. So it kind of eases the postpartum syndrome for me and makes me feel relevant to the judicial branch in some way. I'm also on probate and conservatorship task force, which the chief also put me on.
Well, this is very impressive. I mean, not just because it is the appointment by our Chief Justice, Ron George, but by virtue of the fact that someone has spent so much time as a judge that you'd willingly come back on these special assignments. And
I'm grateful for them.
well, I think the court itself is very grateful to you for doing this, as well as litigants and other members of the public and the task forces. Again, my notes reflect that it was almost 20 years that you spent on the trial court, considering municipal court and superior court, and then you sought appointment to the Court of Appeal, and in recognition of your talents and experience, Governor Davis appointed you to the position of Associate Justice in Division 4.
Right, that was to replace Mark Pochet initially.
Right. And then approximately a year later, you were appointed Presiding Justice of Division 4.
That's because you wouldn't do it.
I won't comment on that at all. But you certainly served us well, the members of Division 4, and I mean that very seriously.
Oh, thank you. It's good. I loved it here.
I know you did.
We really got along, didn't we?
We did. We had a great group, and I was going to say that I felt that we were very productive, and I think in terms of our productivity, much of that is attributed to your leadership, which
It's very kind of you.
which still keeps us fairly well off in the statistics even to today. So again, thank you for your leadership. Research discloses that during the 5 years that you were on the Court of Appeal, you authored over 50 published opinions, as well as 4 published dissents. Can you tell us perhaps a little bit about a few of those opinions that might stand out from your perspective?
Yeah, let me begin by saying that when I got this binder and saw that I had published 50 opinions in 5 years, my first reaction is, I can't possibly have had that much to say to add to the totality of human knowledge, and I must have overpublished. So I'm sure I did. So I went through the list, and I recalled some of the cases, and some of the cases I recalled less. And it also occurs to me that I will recall those cases longer than anyone else, so what does that tell you about the permanency of what we do? In any case, I made a short list here.
Excellent.
Of the cases that I remember fondly. One was Burstein versus Yumi Motors, and that was a case in which we held that staring in the workplace under certain circumstances where the starer had previously been a stalker and had been warned by management to stay away from this woman can constitute sexual harassment.
I remember that case, even though I wasn't on the panel. As I recall, we had Judge Chiantelli, who was sitting pro tem for us on Division 4, and I forget who the fourth judge was, a third judge was. I guess it was
It was Pat Sepulveda.
Justice Sepulveda, who currently sits with us. And as I recall, there was a lot of discussion, not only in chambers, but in hallways and things of that nature. And
You mean when we were screaming at each other in the hall? You're talking about those events? Yes, actually, my opinion started out as a dissent. It's the only one that I can recall in the 5 years in which that occurred, and that the dissent ultimately became a unanimous opinion of the court.
yeah, that was my recollection. Is the same as yours, and that's impressive when you can start out with a dissent and then somehow convince your colleagues that.
I felt
should
good
be.
about that.
Yeah, that.
Another case was the in Ray Providian credit card cases. That was in 2002, which I think was the first case after the adoption of California Rules of Court 243.1 and 243.2, limiting the manner in which a court could seal records in the course of a trial. This case involved the trial court judge, Stu Pollock, as a matter of fact, at that time,
Sitting here
who
now.
had unsealed records. And the question was, what is the standards for unsealing records? Are they the same as sealing records? If you seal records, you have to make certain specific findings. Can those findings be implied if you unseal records? And we said yes, they can, and that the trial court judge has considerable discretion in that regard.
Yeah, that's an off-cited case.
It is often, I think it is often cited. Another case was the case of McKesson versus HBOC. That was in 2004. In that case, the Department of Justice had opened up a criminal investigation against McKesson following the virtual collapse of its shares after it acquired HBOC in a corporate takeover. It was McKesson's position that it was all unknown to McKesson, that HBOC had misled them, and in that regard, they hired an outside law firm to come in and generate a report, basically an audit, and contained deposed interviews of chief executives and others and so on, and they gave that to the Department of Justice with an agreement between McKesson and the Department of Justice that it would remain secret, that it wouldn't waive the attorney-client or work product privilege be shown to no one else. Thereupon, the Department of Justice refocused their interest on HBOC. The shareholders later filed suit, and McKesson refused to give that report on the basis that it was privileged by the attorney-client work product privilege. And we held that it was not, that McKesson was not then or ever on the same side of the case as the Department of Justice, that the real parties injured here were those very shareholders trying to get that report, and we held that they were entitled to it. There were obviously policy considerations that were worrisome in the case, because you do want to encourage cooperation with law enforcement, but it seemed to us that did not outweigh the right of the shareholders to that information absent privilege, and we found the privileges had been waived.
Yeah, I recall that case.
That is not a unanimous view across the country.
Right.
It is, there are lots of splits on that opinion, but it remains the law in California.
Right.
Let's see. It was Bowman versus City of Berkeley in 2005. There, the city granted a permit for the construction of a low-cost multi-unit dwelling in a blighted, highly commercial area, and the neighbors objected to it, and on the basis of artistic merit of the structure,
Yeah, I remember
purely
this case.
aesthetics. And while it was a case that was somewhat similar to this, I think it was Justice Simon's opinion, actually, Division 5, that said that that kind of objection is sufficient, at least in the wilderness where you're talking about hiding a lake or covering a reservoir with some kind of a contraption that is an eyesore. And we felt that didn't apply in a blighted commercial area, and if objections are made purely on the basis of aesthetics, they do not rise to sufficient objections to require an environmental impact report.
Yeah, that was a heavily contested case.
Heavily contested.
I remember I was on that panel, so I am somewhat familiar with that case.
Let's see. Are there any others in here? You asked me about dissents. The dissent that stands out, and there were very few.
Yes.
And we can talk about that and why, but I dissented in a case called Citizens for Better Streets versus the Board of Supervisors. In that case, following the earthquake of 1987, was it? The state of California, through Caltrans, and by contract, gave to the city of San Francisco some land down near the freeway where the former freeway overpass had collapsed at the foot of Broadway. And it said this must be used for the purpose of reconstructing the streets and the freeway on-ramp. The city then instead used the property to transfer for virtually no consideration to a developer for the construction of low-cost housing. And while I admired the social benefit, I was taken by the fact that it seemed to me that at the very least they should go back to the legislature, or at least Caltrans, and seek some kind of blessing or offer the property back because it was given for a different purpose.
Right.
My colleagues disagreed.
I was not one of those disagreeing.
And you were not on that case.
I was not on that
No.
case, but I recall.
And I'm going to say that if you were on that case, I think we would have been 2-1 in favor. But I'm not going to stick your neck out.
No, but I do remember that case very well, and it was an interesting issue in the case.
It was, yeah. Those are my cases of note.
All right. Well, thanks, Larry. And I say I was with you on some of these, and I know I didn't dissent from anything you did.
No.
So,
we never dissented much here in my tenure. It's either because the cases were fairly clear, but I like to think that it's also because we tried to build consensus. There's real value in doing that. Not to say that there isn't value in dissent. There is, but it seems to me we all tried to agree if we could.
right.
And it was only when we couldn't agree,
Someone had.
you know, after a reasonable attempt that there would be dissents.
Right. And I think that's a very good approach to things. Because it's hard for one to talk about oneself, I'm going to just go through some of the law-related organizations that you belong to, and I'm doing that because it's a very impressive list, some of which we've already covered, but you served on the Appellate Courts Committee of the California Judges Association. You've been a member of the Judicial Council appointed by the Chief Justice, serving on the Probate and Mental Health Advisory Committee, and chair of the Rules Subcommittee. In connection with serving on the Rules Committee, I still recall you walking down the corridors here with those huge binders that you had to review. And
That was a spectacularly intense job, because almost everything that is destined to become a rule or a form has to be vetted through RUPRO, Rules and Projects Committee. Yeah. And so every week I would receive from 2 to 6 binders of proposals, both from all the task force and sometimes from individual judges, sometimes from people running projects within the AOC and so on. Right. And it was just a lot of work. I really enjoyed it, and I had good people on RUPRO and wonderful staff.
But it was, I mean, this is work in addition to doing your cases and.
Right.
So
It's
and I
kind
know
of
you
a full-time job by itself.
It is, it is.
But, you know, it was made possible because the people that are working in the AOC are astonishingly professional and motivated, and they work long hours, and they really are terrific. I can't say enough about them.
Now, in addition to what I've already discussed with you, you served on the executive board of the National College of Probate Judges. You're a board member of the Bar Association of San Francisco litigation section. You're a founding member and president of the USF in a court, which my daughter belongs to.
And she is now on the board.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. And impressively, I mean, I know you've received many, many honors and awards, but you were voted the Trial Judge of the Year by the San Francisco Trial Lawyers Association. And although I don't have a note on this, you also received, as I recall, because I was probably at the dinner, the Consumer Attorneys Award for Judge of the Year or something.
Justice of the Year.
Justice of the Year. So that was it's a high honor as well. Do you believe that it's important for the judiciary, to the judiciary, for judges to be involved in these types of organizations?
I do. It establishes a communication with the legal community. It shows that you're willing to socialize, and you know, it kind of softens the ivory tower, unapproachable nature of what we do.
Right. And I know through your
You
law,
learn things, you teach, and you also learn.
yeah. I was going to say through the Inner Court, of which you're past president, USF Inner Court. Another big plus is that I think you have an opportunity to teach younger lawyers things about the law that are very important.
Right. And I still teach in the probate area, and enjoy that too.
Right. And you also serve on a task force dealing with the probate court. I believe.
Right. I think we're all done now. We have submitted our report to the
Oh, that's-
Judicial Council, and we've dissolved. But
All right.
I'm still working on the DV Task Force report.
Yes. Now you retired, well-deserved retirement, I might add, with the number of cases you handled, being presiding judge of Division 4, the administrative end of the thing, your commitment to these other organizations, and everything you've been doing as a judge for an awful long time, that this retirement was well-deserved. However, you can't help yourself, I know, Larry, because although you have retired, you're still doing a number of things in retirement, including coming back on task forces for the court here. So are you enjoying retirement? I know you're doing some private judging, of course.
Yes, I am. I'm with ADR Services, along with your friends Al Chiantelli and Alex Saldamondo and Dick Hodge, and Mo Sabra still. And
It's a good group you have.
yeah, good group. And it's very challenging. Instead of dealing with people who can be unreasonable, who have to listen to you, you're dealing with people who can be unreasonable, who don't have to listen to you. It's quite a catharsis.
You take a look. I guess-
Somewhat stressful, actually, more so than I had anticipated.
Yeah, I assume there has to be a little adjustment because as a judge, you're
It was a
kind
big adjustment.
of, yeah. But you're adjusting to it well.
Well, I hope
understand.
so.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it. It's a challenge. You know, I'm trying not to do it on a full-time basis, but a substantial amount of time. And the idea behind my retirement was to try that as a challenge, see who would be willing to pay for my services instead of having to take them involuntarily, and also having some time to travel and play golf and pursue other interests, photography and so on, and just kind of slow down a little bit.
Well, I don't know how much you're slowing down. You still
don't
seem
either.
very, very, very active, as you have been your whole life. Let me just ask you this. Maybe you don't have any advice, or maybe you do, but with such a long and distinguished career as an attorney, a trial judge, an appellate court justice, including all the organizations you participated in, do you have any words of advice for anyone considering a career in the law?
Well, you know, I anticipated that question, and without pontificating, I just think it is a wonderful profession. It can be whatever you want it to be, especially if you're lucky enough to, as you and I were, to be in the right place at the right time with the right background and be able to be on the bench. That was a sensational life and career, and even without that, you can. It's a very rewarding thing. Can be a scholarly enterprise, a collegial one if you allow it to be and insist that it be. And I would recommend it to anybody.
Larry, I just would say, I mean this very seriously, with your years as an attorney and on the trial bench and on the appellate court, your dedication to these various organizations, your volunteer work has made a remarkable career, and I think it's not just me thanking you for your service, but I think the public citizens of the state of California should be, and they probably are, very grateful for the giving of your time and talents. And I hope you take some pride in that and some solace in that, because you've had such a long and distinguished career.
More every moment that I hear your generous remarks.
Okay, Larry. Well, I'm going to wish
How
you
nice.
the best of luck, and congratulations again for everything you have accomplished, which has been a great deal, and continue enjoying your retirement.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jared. All right.